Okay, guys, here we go. Now we're talking Traxxas, mostly. Alright, on the left here, we've got the standard Traxxas shock that comes factory on your typical Traxxas Slash. You know, you recognize it if you look at this Traxxas. So, you've got the clip to do your spacing, your ride height. As you'll see, this one already has the aluminum cap upgrade to it. And anyway, when I was looking at these, I wanted to know what the big difference was with what they called the Big Bore shock, the Traxxas Big Bore. So how much bigger it is than the standard bore. Because a bore is typically going to be the size of the inside of the piston that's within there. This is the outside that I'm showing you there. But anyway, your stock Traxxas piston, let me do you some measurements for you. Your standard length, fully extended, is going to be about 110 millimeters. Okay, your standard length of your big bores are actually just a touch shorter on this set, 108 millimeters. So you actually lose a little bit of a stroke on that. So I thought, well, maybe these ones have actually the larger pistons, and you know that the outside of this shock actually is plastic. The body, and this one's aluminum, and you can even just visually see it. You can tell there is a difference between the two. But the piston size is what I was more interested in than anything else. So if we, let me make it a little bit easier. Take that shock off. I'm going to take this cap off here and give you a measurement of what this bore actually is on the stock versus the quote-unquote big bore pistons. So here we go. Alright, we're back down. It's close enough. Okay, measure that. We're at 10.14 millimeters, so essentially a 10 millimeter bore. Okay, so here we go with the big bore, quote unquote, shocks that Traxxas sells for quite a bit more on the upgrade. Okay, here we go. Oh, 10.08. This is exactly the same bore as stock. So, where Traxxas says this is a big bore, I don't agree with that claim. So, overall length, as you saw before, the compressed length is actually exactly the same, equal on the stock Traxxas versus the quote-unquote big bores. You are going to be 78 millimeters compressed on the big bores, and you are 78 millimeters on the standard. So there's no benefit of a longer stroke. There's no actual big bore. It's not a larger bore than the standard shock. It's exactly the same. So the upgrades that you do have with this shock is it's got an aluminum case and aluminum cap, so it's not going to be as prone to, well, what a lot of people have, the common problem of blowing the cap off the shock. But here's the deal with blowing the cap off. This one I've already made adjustments with, but if you see that when you look at the shock and I fully compress it, there's no space here between the bottom shock adapter and the shaft. You could look at the Big Bore. I'm fully compressed. Oh, look at that gap there. So if you take your standard front shock off of any of your Traxxas vehicles and take your spring off and compress it and take a look at this, you'll see that there is that much gap on your standard shock. So pretty much whenever you're bottoming out your vehicle, the piston is bottoming out on the cap and you're blowing your freaking cap off your car. So as long as you're not a hardcore basher, you can solve majority of your problems on a stock shock just by adding some spacers, some plastic spacers in between here to keep the shock from bottoming out on the top of the cap. So this one, I've got my own shaft in there that's actually a little bit shorter than the stock shaft, and so it does not bottom out. Now, I'd already bought these upgraded aluminum caps, so might as well keep them. But I would bet that this would solve half of your guys' problems that are blowing the caps off. And for the price of the upgrade of these Traxxas Big Bore quote-unquote shocks, you know, depending where you get them, $60, $70, whatever, versus your stock shock and putting a, whatever, pay $10, $15 for an aluminum cap. That's for the extra insurance that it's not going to blow off, and even if you do pop it off after you've shortened the shaft or made some spacers, alright, you're going to be more hardcore than the typical user, so yeah, you can upgrade to the aluminum shocks. But that's the main issue with Traxxas front shocks, is they bottom out on the cap. That's simple, easy to see that that's what the deal is. So back to what they call their Big Bores again. The upgrades that is there also is they do have the coated shafts, so they're going to be a little bit smoother than the stock. You can tell it's just standard chrome. And this is I can't remember if it's nitride coated or titanium coated, cobalt, whatever. It is the action's smoother, but if you're a basher, that's going to wear off fairly quickly. So that isn't, in my opinion, a ton of, or worth the $70 upgrade. Now the aluminum shock body is a significant increase, in my opinion, because when the fluid is flowing through there, the viscosity of the fluid, you're taking mechanical energy and turning it into heat energy with the resistance. So the aluminum shock body is going to dissipate the heat that's generated from the moving components into the fluid. It's going to dissipate it into the air better, where the plastic shock is going to insulate more so than it's going to dissipate. So there is a benefit with this shock body. It's not going to split on you or blow out, and the aluminum cap together, it's going to be more durable. If you take a look though at the springs, this is the upgraded spring with the Big Bores, quote unquote, and the spring diameter total circumference is going to be right around 17 millimeters. You take a look at the stock spring diameter, and it's 18.5 millimeters. So take it with a grain of salt. I mean, yes, it's a larger diameter, but these ones are heavier duty. As you can see, I've got the blue two stripes. These are a heavier duty dual rate kind of a spring. So you can't really compare apples to apples to oranges in this case, because yeah, it's longer. This one's a bit longer on the total length of it, but the spring diameter does make a difference, and you really can't, you know, tell whether or not one's got a benefit more so than the other one. This is a thinner spring, so of course this one's going to be thicker. So, you know, you might be able to get some heavier duty springs for these. I'm not quite sure on that one, but the benefit, in my opinion, and this is my personal opinion, the Traxxas Big Bores are not worth the price of the upgrade. You can go on Amazon and find aluminum shocks that are pretty much no-name brand or generic brand that are the same length for your Traxxas Slash style, which is going to be like 110 millimeters in the back, and I can't remember, it's like 100 or 95 millimeters in the front. I know you guys are going to be overcritical and correct me on it, but semantics about that. You can get pretty much the same thing online on Amazon for like $40. Now, here is what a difference is. This is, to me, is what's considered a big bore. This is the shock that comes off my Team C short course truck, and all the Team C vehicles and any race quality vehicles, not basher base, but race quality. It does stand to mention, I should before I say that there is another shock here that can be upgraded on the Traxxas, which is the GTR shock, I believe is the name for it. And that one truly is a bigger bore. It is not the standard Traxxas 10 millimeter on the big bore and the stock 10 millimeter bore. It actually is a bigger shock, and it is quite a bit more expensive. And then you're getting the price range of the Pro lines with the double springs with the damper or the collar in between. So, but this comes standard on Team C and a lot of, you know, X-ray type vehicles. And this bore is not a 10 millimeter. If I can try to make this come off a little bit easier. And it does have these coated shafts on there from the manufacturer. Oh, all right. Got the cap loose here. And here we got the standard bore on this shock. As you can see there, is 12 millimeters. That's 2 millimeters larger piston bore than the standard shocks. Now this is what I personally would consider a big bore shock. This is a 110 vehicle shock. It is the same bore diameter as a buggy, as the Team C buggies, X-ray buggies associated. There are some smaller pistons out there, but it kind of bugs me that more manufacturers do not actually give you specifications on what shock you're buying, and to know. They just say, oh, it's the length, this length, and that's all you need to know, or maybe the compression, but they don't even come close to touching on how big the bore itself is. And to me, that's a disservice. If you're looking for a larger piston, that's going to give you more cush on your landings. So anyway, take it or leave it. You can decide for yourself what shocks you're going to buy and which ones you think are worth upgrading to. But these Team C ones, I mean, I can buy a set that's from the manufacturer, X-ray, a lot of other ones, for the same price as what you're going to be paying for these big bore quote-unquote shocks. So I would do a little more research yourself and find, personally, if you're looking to save a little bit of money, maybe look online for something else that might work for you. So there we go, guys. Thanks for watching.